I was having y'all, your boy Rico from RicoScores, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not have any idea who this guy was or that the fact that he even existed until after we signed him. So after we signed him, I had to go watch some tape, do a lot of research. I'm really liking this signing. The Washington Commanders went and got a big trash talking athletic freak and undrafted free agent cornerback Chigozie, I believe that's how you pronounce the first name, Anusiem. I hope that's how you pronounce the last name. We're just going to call him Chiggy for the remainder of this video because that's the nickname that they call him. He has a 9.75 relative athletic score. Is he a 53-man lock though? We're going to do a deep dive into his weaknesses and strengths, where he is in his development so far. We're going to do a deep dive into his athleticism, and not even just like the relative athletic score, but we also want to compare him to other corners that participated at the combine and things like that. Also, at the end of the video, just briefly, we got to talk about the fact that the Eagles just went and signed a tackle off of the free agent market. Now that left tackle market is very thin. What are the Commanders planning on doing right now? But before we dive into all of that, make sure you still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all the content. Again, I know I'm backed up. I'm way backed up. I'm working on a whole breakdown for Sam Hartman. I'm working on a breakdown for all of the undrafted free agents that we brought in, and I still got to get to all of our draft picks. The only ones that I've broken down so far are Jayden and Javonte, the first pick of our draft class and the last pick of our draft class. I'm working on it. It's on the way. Breakdown's ready, but I've just been busy. I literally just got home like a little over an hour ago, so I've just been super busy even outside of YouTube. So just be patient with me. They're on the way. They're going to come out over the course of time, and I was supposed to do a call-in show live stream today, but I delayed that till Monday, so make sure you pull up Monday evening/night for the call-in show, for you to call in, voice your opinions about how you feel about everything going on so far throughout the draft process and everything. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so at 3 p.m., Tom Pelissero, again, I was not at home, announced and reported through Twitter that the Commanders gave former Colorado State cornerback Chiggy a whopping $50,000 signing bonus and a $300,000 base salary guarantee per source. Half the league wanted Chiggy after he went undrafted, and Washington paid up to lock him in. So yes, just in case if you're wondering, yes, that is a lot of money for an undrafted free agent, like a whole lot. That is very rare. He's almost basically a part of our draft class with the way that we're paying him. But Sam Fortier brings up a great point that I definitely agree with, because he said on Twitter, smart to be aggressive with undrafted free agents at this stage of the roster build. Team still has a long way to go. It can only really benefit from low stakes gambles on the margins, and Josh Harris has already let it be known he's not going to be cheap. And on top of things, we have the second most cap space. Like, it just makes too much sense that if there ever is a bidding war for any player, especially for an undrafted free agent, and we're talking still relatively little money compared to what most NFL players make, compared to what Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Terry McLaurin are making, $300,000 is a lot of money, especially to me. I mean, that's an immense amount of money for me personally, but even undrafted free agent standards, that's a lot of money. But, you know, in comparison to most of the NFL, not necessarily. Well, at least the top players in the NFL. But that's still a lot, and we could only benefit really from taking these risks and outbidding players. Again, we have the second most cap space. We have a lot of money to spend, and if anybody's going to go the extra mile to get a guy that they really, really want, it is the Commanders. Again, this is a guy that a lot of people, Tom Pelissero said half the league tried to sign him as an undrafted free agent. So I feel like there's two things there. Of course, we had to pay up. We had to outbid everybody. It pretty much felt like recruiting at this point, at this current climate in college football right now. I hate it. I love NIL in general. I love the theory, but the way that it's actually being used and executed, absolutely hate how we're just completely playing for players, and recruiting almost feels like it doesn't matter anymore. But that's just a whole nother tangent for a whole nother video, basically. But at the same time, we basically had to outbid other teams for Chiggy. But I feel like at the same time, if you ask them, I feel like the money wasn't the only part of it. We've seen a lot of undrafted free agents and even players that we drafted repeatedly say that they love the scheme that Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. run, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And we're talking about defensive players that we've brought in the past few days. So I feel like that played a part in it as well. I mean, you saw just through free agency, you saw by all of the guys we were able to hire to our coaching staff, the front office members we brought in, and how everybody has talked after we've drafted them. Everybody keeps saying that they want to be a part of the Commanders, and everybody can basically see the light at the end of the tunnel. They see the vision for this franchise going from the dark ages to our golden age, our prime. And so people want to jump aboard before it's too late, before we don't have spots open for an undrafted free agent cornerback that we even feel is worth $300,000, because our cornerback group is already so solid. We don't care enough to look that far and to have to outbid for a guy like that. This is the best time to jump on board before we become consistently competitive. We're always playoff contenders, Super Bowl contenders. This is the right time for a guy like Chiggy to go ahead and jump on in before you get left behind. And so again, I'm pretty sure us outbidding other teams for him played a large part in it, but you can't convince me that it also wasn't what we're building here and the scheme that we're running that also wanted him to come here. But again, just let you know, people call him Chiggy, so that was my only attempt at his name so far. I need to go and sit down and try to find some YouTube videos of hopefully him pronouncing his own name, or maybe somebody like an announcer from one of his games doing it. I'll check that out later. Again, we're just going to call him Chiggy from now on. And a lot of people think that he's a huge steal as an undrafted free agent target, but I mean, at the same time, if Tom Pelissero said that half of the league wanted him, then we can kind of assume that as well. But even on top of that, several analysts and experts mocked him going in the 6th round of the NFL draft. Like, before we even picked him up as an undrafted free agent, you go look like days ago, weeks ago, most people are saying that this guy should have been basically a 6th round pick. And even Hero Sports specifically comped him to a faster Kendall Fuller. That's really interesting, especially since they aren't Commanders fans. So that means that they really dug deep on that one. And he must literally be a faster Kendall Fuller for a non-Commanders fan, a non-Commanders reporter, to go with somebody like Kendall Fuller, who isn't like the most well-known or fully appreciated corner household name around the NFL. Like, they had to really like go deep and compare a lot of different corners and be like, yo, that's specifically the guy that he's exactly like. Because that's very random. If you're not a Commanders fan, or I guess a Miami Dolphins fan at this point, because that's where Kendall Fuller landed, you're like, a lot of people will probably be like, who? Unless you're like a real deep football guy. And that's just a really random and specific comparison. So again, I feel like I should believe them just off of the fact that it's just that random and specific. Also, Eric Galko, the director of football operations and player personnel of the East-West Shrine Bowl, tweeted and said, Chiggy of CSU football was one of our analytically highest graded G5 cornerbacks all season long. So he has the stats, the advanced stats to back him up, and also impressed during the East-West Shrine Bowl week. And after his pro day, it's unlikely he slips too far on day 3 of the NFL draft. That's just what he did. They felt like he may even go 5th, maybe 6th round. We got him as an undrafted free agent. He also points out the fact, look at his RAS score right here, his relative athletic score. This was included in his tweet, and in the remainder of the tweet, he said he ran a 4.39 at 6'1", 200 pounds. That is incredible. He also ran a 2.49 20 and a 1.57 10-yard split. That's insane. He had a 37.5 vertical. That's insane as well. And a 10.4 broad jump is not too bad either. And he also went on to say he's long, athletic, an efficient mover with immediate outside corner and special teams value, even as a rookie. And just to let you know, his 40 time would have been tied for the 8th best 40 time among cornerbacks at the NFL Combine if he was actually to go there. And remember, he's 6'1", 200 pounds. So he's one of the heaviest corners in this class, and yet he ran the 8th best 40 time. You can't teach that, man. There's just certain things you're just born with it or you're not. Speaking of you're born with it or you're not, you just got it in you. It's in you, not on you. You know what I'm saying? You dig? I also love the fact that he embraces his title as his college team's best trash talker. From Cal football, the Bears, he embraces the fact that he is the best trash talker. It says junior cornerback, and this comes all the way back from 2021. This article is actually quite old, but he said that his words primarily provide additional self-motivation. The article says you could probably start a pretty good argument by asking California football players who's the fastest on the team. And again, this is when he was on California before he went to Colorado State. He's coming out of the draft. Well, he went undrafted, but we're getting him as an undrafted free agent with him most recently being on Colorado State. I failed to mention that at the beginning of the video. Sorry for that. But when he was back on Cal, where he originally went coming out of high school, the article said you could probably start a pretty good argument by asking his Cal football players who's the fastest on the team or the strongest or maybe even the best looking. But there seems to be little debate on which Golden Bear talks the best trash. It's junior quarterback Chiggy. Senior safety Elijah Hicks easily conferred that title to Chiggy. Quote, he enjoys it in everything. He's good at it too, getting in people's heads. It's funny because sometimes I'm like, dang, Chiggy, he really be talking that stuff, unquote. And he didn't say the word stuff. But continuing on, Chiggy, a smart, thoughtful native of La Habra in Southern California, acknowledges his place in the Bears trash talking pecking order. He said, quote, I do talk the most trash on the team. I probably would say. To me, it makes me kind of play better because obviously everyone wants to beat me, so I always have to be at my best, unquote. And I like that because he uses trash talk not only as self-motivation, but also it encourages everybody going against him to have to bring their best to him to stop the trash talk, which also forces him to raise his game as well. That's why trash talking is so important. But of course, even outside of how it helps the team and things like that, just for a very selfish reason, I love trash talk. I'm a huge trash talker. If y'all ever get the chance to hoop with me or whatever, even video games, I'm a huge trash talker. That probably is now my favorite trait of his. Forget all of the athleticism. The fact that he's a trash talker, I'm super rooting for him to make the team now. Like, I'm not gonna lie, big trash talkers have always been my favorite players in all of sports, really, but especially football. Like Cam Newton, Adam Pac-Man Jones, obviously because we went to the same high school. Like, that's just obvious. And Anthony Edwards from Atlanta, so that's also some additional bias there, but they're big trash talkers. But I'd probably be rooting for them even if they weren't. But the fact that they're huge trash talkers made them literally ascend to my favorite players of all time, regardless of sport. And Anthony Edwards right now is my favorite athlete in all of sports, regardless. Most relatable player on top of everything else. Accent, personality, the Joan, and everything. Like, and it literally feels like I know him. I literally see Anthony Edwards in half of my friends. But you also have Chad Ochocinco. You got Marcus Peters. You got Marshawn Lynch. And then Russell Westbrook used to be one of my favorite players back when he was killing it. He was literally my favorite player at one point in time until, his athleticism started to decline. I still root for him, but, Anthony Edwards took that crown as far as basketball goes. But again, that list of names are literally some of my favorite players of all time, regardless of sports, purely because of their play styles, their personalities, and most importantly, their trash talking. So y'all know this guy just skyrocketed up my list of favorite undrafted free agent signings. I didn't even know who he was just a few hours ago, and now after watching a little bit of tape on him, but most notably seeing his athleticism, and then now, really, if anything, most importantly, finding out that he's a huge trash talker. Oh yeah, one of my favorite guys that we've brought in this entire offseason, including the draft class and all of the free agents we brought in, the veteran free agents we brought in back in mid-March. Just off of that alone, man, I'm rooting for him to ball out. If you're ever wondering who I'm rooting for to make this 53-man roster, especially in the cornerback group specifically, just know this guy is highly up there. Also, NFL Draft Diamonds did a great breakdown on him. We're just going to skip to their scheme fit form in the conclusion. We're not going to read like the entire breakdown, but they said scheme fit. They said he's best fit for an aggressive defense that allows him to jam receivers and play tight man coverage. That's literally what Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. want to do. That's literally the defense, the style of cornerback play, secondary play that they deployed with the Dallas Cowboys the past 3 years, which led to them being the best takeaway defense in the NFL by far over the last 3 years. And I also believe in their ability to manufacture pressure even outside of the talent that we have in this front seven, specifically the defensive line. Just how creative Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. get as far as manufacturing pressure with blitzes, getting creative and things like that. I'm just expecting our DBs to be able to play just as aggressive as the Cowboys DBs did the past 3 years. So I'm thinking literally Chigozie is like a beautiful, perfect match for the system that Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. are going to deploy here. And again, like I said, I feel like outbidding for him played a large role as well, of course. Like, we're not even going to sit here and act like it didn't, but scheme fit right there according to NFL Draft Diamonds, on top of my already opinion with me agreeing with them. There you go. And then power statement, aka the conclusion, they said Chigozie is a smart physical man corner that is capable of locking down #1 receivers and willing to support in the run game. He projects as someone who can step directly into a 2 deep for a professional team and grow into an NFL starter by the end of his rookie contract. There you go. In the NFL Network, Lance Zierlein, he said, overview: Chigozie is a big, strong outside corner whose lack of ball production could cancel out his favorable size. He doesn't have ideal top-end speed or closing burst, which is crazy because that's literally what he tested at the combine. But maybe, I mean, I thought I saw it on tape, but I guess Lance Zierlein didn't necessarily see it on tape. I thought I saw that 4.3 sub 4.4 speed in on the tape that I watched. I didn't watch like a lot of tape, but I watched some tape. I thought he looked fast out there. I thought he looked big and fast. He kind of looked like one of the best athletes on the field any given play that I watched him. They continued on to say he's more interested in covering than finding the ball and taking it away, and that is unlikely to change in the NFL. I hope he does. I mean, that's something you definitely got to improve on. You got to improve your ball skills, because that's how you get flagged at the NFL level. You know how corners are right there with receivers, but they never get their head turned around when the ball comes, so then they end up getting flagged for pass interference, even though they had perfect coverage. You're right there. Literally, if you just turn your head, the refs just simply won't throw the flag, just because you literally, all you got to do is turn your head, at least attempt to make a play on the ball. Perfect coverage. You're with them step for step, right in his hip, right in his pocket, and that's something he's got to fix. Like, that's probably his biggest weakness right now. You got to fix that before you can see the field for us. Immense of talent, but we got to work on that, and if anybody can get that out of him, Jason Simmons, with his proven track record of developing a whole bunch of defensive backs, especially for the Raiders, and then again, what Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. have done for the Cowboys DBs, it's ridiculous, man. I'm expecting us to get closer to people's ceilings more often than not. We'll see if Chigozie can be one of those guys. Then he also pointed out his strengths: big cornerback with muscular build and plus wingspan, might have the right blend of athleticism and tackling to relocate the safety. Interesting. Swings hips open from press and crowds outside release quickly, adequate balance to gather and phase the comeback route, and has play strength to stand his ground and make tackles on the perimeter. And again, to my point that I just briefly mentioned, if there's any coaching staff that can bring out his strengths and put him in situations to win as often as possible, it's this one. I fully trust Dan Quinn, Joe Wood Jr., and Jason Simmons to develop him and give him a real shot at making the 53-man roster, because you can't teach his athletic gifts. You can't teach being one of the heaviest corners in the draft while also being one of the fastest, the 8th fastest according to his 40 time. But he also has a nice base of play traits outside of his natural gifts. Like, he's not just super raw. Like, he gives coaches something to start with and work with. He's not unplayable like my dog Tyler Owens. Like, Chigozie has some rawness to his game, of course, but he's not Tyler Owens' level of rawness at all. Like, there's a little bit of nuance to his game that you're like, okay, we can start here and we can develop him to make him better. He's not just coming in as an unplayable ball of clay like Tyler Owens is. I can see him definitely flashing in training camp, but still being very inconsistent, especially when he's being targeted deep and he has to turn around and get his hand up. But as long anything underneath, I trust him right now. There's still some rawness there, nuance that we got to work on, but underneath, cool. Will be fairly inconsistent there, but he'll flash. Deep down the field, I think he's cooked. I think that's his problem. Even with the speed and length, which you would think would be perfect as far as like being a deep down the field, pass stopper, pass deflector corner, he has the exact build you want for that, but he just doesn't have the technique just yet. And to me, it's really just going to be on the coaches to be patient enough to let him reach his potential. And it's up to him, of course, to put in the work and to have the great work ethic to get there as well. But otherwise, this is the type of player that I could easily see end up on the bottom of another team's roster, maybe even somebody's practice squad. And then we'll look back a couple of years from now, he'll end up being a good player. And So it's basically like, how patient are the Commanders willing to be with him? He may not make the 53-man roster, but are we willing to stow him onto the practice squad until he's actually playable in games right now? And I keep using the word playable because it doesn't matter how much of a freak athlete you are. If you're not there mentally, if the game doesn't slow down for you, if you don't have the right IQ, if you don't have the right technique, again, most notably deep down the field, at least get your head turned around and make a play on the ball. If you don't have that, we literally can't put you on the field, even if you're the most athletic freak of all time. Again, my boy Tyler Owens is arguably one of the most athletic players we've ever seen ever touch an NFL field, to ever put on a helmet. But he's still not playable because of how drastically raw he is. So even though Chiggy is not necessarily that raw, he's still raw. We gotta see what happens. I'm excited about rookie minicamp, man. And before we get up out of here, that veteran tackle market starting to look a little ugly, starting to shrink up a little bit, man, starting to shrivel up, because Adam Schefter announced like 2 hours ago, offensive line help in Philadelphia. Former Jets first-round pick draft choice Mekhi Becton plans to sign a one-year deal worth up to $5.5 million with the Eagles. Pending a physical Monday per his agents, Alan Herman and Jared Fox, Becton is expected to be an Eagles swing tackle, and that's pretty good value for them. Now, granted, he is injury-prone, and even after we traded Chase Young and Montez Sweat, when we played the Jets last year, our backup Casey Toohill, Jay Smith-Williams, and those guys were giving him the business. So he's extremely inconsistent, very high ceiling. But at this point, after his rookie contract is already up, he's already into like his 5th year of his career. He's still too inconsistent for me. But I would have been willing to give him $5.5 million like the Eagles did. I wouldn't have given him big money. I wouldn't have expected him to come in and be a starting left tackle. But he is still a tackle with some talent that I would have liked to see us bring in. But shouts out to the Eagles for getting in on that and being willing to give them $5.5 million to do it. But basically, that's their high-end, their higher ceiling, lower floor version of what I hope Cornelius Lucas is for us as a backup swing tackle. So now, unless the Commanders are somehow even higher on Cornelius Lucas than even Ron Rivera was, then our only real options out there as far as veteran starting left tackles are Donovan Smith, who isn't very good, but at the very least, he's not a major injury risk. And then you also have David Bakhtiari, who's still playing at an all-pro level. He was literally just playing at an all-pro level last season in 2023, that recently. But the problem is, can you trust him to even start 5 games for you, health and injury-wise? But you never know. How about David Bakhtiari for 5 games and then Brandon Coleman for the rest? Hopefully by the time that David Bakhtiari is projected to end up getting hurt like he seems to do for the past few years, hopefully by then Brandon Coleman is not raw enough. He's become nuanced enough. He's developed enough to where he could take over and start a left tackle for you. Because again, I like Cornelius Lucas, but going into week 1, assuming he's your starter, I'm uncomfortable with that. I like him as a swing tackle, but there is a reason that Charles Leno started over him the entire time that he was healthy. There is a reason. I like Cornelius Lucas. I'm not trying to downplay him, but there is a reason that he's been a backup swing tackle for this long. And again, my main point is, if Rivera and those guys loved him that much and they still felt like he was a backup, there's just no way you can convince me that Adam Peters and those guys who did not draft this guy, I mean, they brought him in as a free agent. They re-signed him technically to the Commanders this offseason, but you can't convince me that somehow they like him. They're higher on Cornelius Lucas and his evaluation as a starting left tackle than Ron Rivera and those guys were. I refuse to believe it. Unless there's something in them that I've missed, I refuse to believe that they're just comfortable with assuming Cornelius Lucas is their starting left tackle going into week 1. But maybe they are. Maybe they're so high on Brandon Coleman that they think that he could be ready to start by week 1 or sooner rather than later. Maybe not mid-season, but maybe after a couple of weeks, Cornelius Lucas hold down the fort for only a couple of weeks rather than the entire first year. I don't know. I'm curious. We'll see. By the time we get to training camp, we'll have our answer. Do they believe in Cornelius Lucas or do they believe in Brandon Coleman? We'll see by the fact if they don't go and sign an outside left tackle free agent right now that can come in and start for you. We'll see. Again, you have Donovan Smith, not as good, but you don't have to worry about the injury risk as much. You have David Bakhtiari, who again just played at an all-pro level just last year, but only played in a couple of games. Hey, man, sign him to a Tyron Smith deal that he signed with the Jets, which is ironically the reason why Mekhi Becton had to leave the Jets to go to the Eagles. Domino effect, kind of. Sign him to a deal, very incentive-based, very cheap, $6 million deal like the Jets gave Tyron Smith, and then it can get way higher. He can get paid way more money depending on how many games he plays. And if he gets hurt, kind of like you expect him to do, then he's only $6 million against the cap, and we could pay him $6 million right now against the cap and still have the second most cap space in the NFL, so it doesn't hurt our pockets at all. So again, if we don't go and get a guy like him or Donovan Smith, that shows me they either believe in Cornelius Lucas or Brandon Coleman more than I particularly do as far as floor goes, not ceiling. I love Brandon Coleman's ceiling, and I'm gonna talk about that in my breakdown for him, like my whole draft breakdown, weaknesses, strengths, his comp, and everything like that. But whoo-wee, man, woo-wee. But yeah, man, that's the end of the video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you let me know in the comment section, of course, how you feel about everything discussed in this video. How do you feel about us signing Chiggy? Do you feel like he has any chance of making this 53-man roster? Do you feel like he has any potential to eventually become a starter, maybe a year or two down the road? Let me know all of that. Do you feel like he's a steal? And also, do you love his trash talking as far as being a part of his game as much as I do? Do you value it as much as I do as a fan? Also, let me know how you feel about our potential tackle situation as well. And yes, sir, I appreciate y'all. Make sure you leave this video with leaving a like. Do not leave this video without leaving a like. And I'm about to keep working. I mean, it's nonstop, man. Now it's time to move on to the next video that I need to work on. I'm still trying to decide whether I'm going to talk about Sam Hartman, maybe the USC running back, maybe one of our draft picks. I don't know. But either way, I'm immediately going from recording this to editing this, getting this out to y'all, to immediately recording the next video. So stay tuned. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.